Zoning appeals for May 9th, 2022. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the April 25th meeting.
Chairman, I motion that we approve those minutes.
Second. Motion by Mrs. Peters, second by Mr. King, or Mr. Pollard. Mr. Pollard. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Any special requests or continuances? All right. We have no findings of fact to finalize tonight. No old business. Any old business from the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. First up is docket BZA 2022-009, special exception. Petitioners Mark Krinsky on behalf of Cummins Inc. Requesting special exception for the property at 1330 North Graham Road in Greenwood to allow for vehicular care services to take place at a property zone interstate commercial district that will operate in compliance with Greenwood Unified Development Ordinance that vehicles undergoing repair may not stay on the property longer than 80 days from service intake. All those wishing to speak on for or against this docket, please stand and be sworn in by our secretary. And do I have anyone online that's wishing to speak to this document? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Mark Krinsky. I'm with Strand Associates, which is a civil engineering consulting firm. Address is 3282 Beach Drive, Columbus, Indiana. I'm part of the design team for the project, so I'd like to just kind of give an overview of the project.
Yeah, if you would just tell us why you're here and what the project is and what you're asking for.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as you mentioned, this project is a project for Cummins that we are designing in conjunction with HOK Architects. We also have Allison Zuck here in attendance as well as Rebecca Savage, who's the project manager for HOK. She's on the Zoom. We also have in attendance Larry Schofield from Cummins, who is managing the project on their end. And also joining from Cummins is Lawrence McCormick. This project is a proposed vehicle service center for existing Cummins customers who can come and have their vehicles serviced at this facility. This would be folks that have engines in their trucks or buses or recreational vehicles potentially. As you see on the layout there, the site is located. The proposed site is located on the Colgan Road. This is just south of County Line Road, just west of Graham Road. So Graham Road is there on the right-hand side of the figure that you're looking at currently, and County Line Road is just to the north. I-65 is located just to the west. The site is, as you see there in the gray, would be the service garage bays on the north part of the site. And it also includes space in red there for retail, where existing customers can come and purchase parts and wait while their vehicles are serviced, in a small warehouse area for storage of parts for those vehicles. Just to give you a little context in terms of notice special exception use in the interstate commerce district for this type of use requires that no vehicles are on site for more than 80 days. This facility is intended to be much faster than that, and vehicles are not intended to be on site more than a day or a couple days. Just to give a little bit of feel for the volume of traffic that we would expect. As part of this facility, we're talking somewhere on the order of 20 to 30 employees coming to and from the site per day, potentially 20 more customers and standard passenger vehicles that might come to buy parts. And then in terms of large vehicles that are being serviced, we're looking on the order of 8 to 12 trucks or buses or recreational vehicles per day. So this is I would consider this a relatively low volume of traffic for a site of this size. We're not talking about a massive distribution center or anything like that. It's really meant to service customers' vehicles kind of on demand when they come into the site. Just in regards to the staff report that was prepared for this petition, we do intend to follow the recommendations and the conditions that are listed in the report. Specifically, I know there's additional landscape requirements for an 8-foot tall berm running the length of the west side of the site and the north, which we intend to include in our site plan application, as well as additional landscaping beyond just the standard landscaping in the ordinance, which we also intend to provide additional screening on the side. That's the west-hand side and the north there. Also in the conditions is listed that we will undertake a traffic study. We're currently doing that study right now for the adjacent intersections in the area, building off of the back of a study that was done in 2020 for another effort in the area. And we also intend to include any improvements to particularly McColgan Road that come out of that study. We intend to include in our plan moving forward. With that, I take any questions.
Okay. We do have statutory criteria. There are for this one. There are 9 of them. We need to get them onto the record. So, do you have your answers to the criteria? If you do, I'll get you started on each of them. If you could just read your response or discuss your response, and then we'll get that on the record.
Is that in the staff report?
Yes, it is part of the staff report.
Which page is it on?
It would be what, page 2? Starting on page 2, yeah. The first one would be the appropriate screening and buffering of the site, including refuse and other service areas, is provided to ensure that the use will be compatible with neighboring properties and will present acceptable view from public ways because
The project meets city agreement landscaping and buffering regulations as noted in section 10-03-06 of the city's unified development ordinance. Cones ensures that the landscape and buffering will be maintained in accordance with the landscape plan. Planted in these areas will be kept healthy and perform over time in accordance with intent. All plant material meets the intent of the Greenwood Planting Guide, and no invasive species will be specified. Soil berms with a mixture of evergreen and deciduous tree species will be provided to screen views to service portions of the facility, particularly on the east, west, and north sides. This buffering will also screen views from the interstate, but more importantly, the buffer will screen views from adjacent future development. A waste and recycling dumpster enclosure with an overhead canopy will be provided and constructed of metal to architecturally match the new facility and will be adequately landscaped to soften the enclosure and blend it with the surrounding landscape. Transformer and generator located on the west side of the building next to the immediate assessment base will also have an enclosure. This enclosure will be constructed with metal to architecturally match the facility. Landscape will be provided around the enclosure to soften and blend it with the surrounding.
Number 2, the ingress, egress, and on-site circulation to and within the site is safe and adequate because
Entry and exit drives are provided in accordance with the subdivision control ordinance and include widths and radii and accommodate the range of vehicles anticipated at the site. Traffic to and from the site is anticipated to consist of approximately 25 employee vehicles arriving and leaving the site once per day, as well as an estimated 12 customer vehicles arriving each day. The deceleration lane is provided at the primary entrance to allow for vehicles to turn into the site while allowing traffic to continue moving on the Colgan Road. The limited traffic generated by the service center is expected to have minimal impact on existing traffic patterns on the adjacent roadways.
Number 3, satisfactory parking and loading facilities are provided because
Parking spaces are provided in accordance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. All parking and loading facilities meet the needs of the proposed use of the site and are located on private property.
Number 4, adequate utility services and related facilities are available because
Utility service providers have been contacted regarding servicing the property. Utility services are available with utility extensions along the Colgan Road from Graham Road to the east.
Number 5, adequate yards and open space are provided because
The provided building setbacks for the service center are approximately 3 times greater than those required by the zoning ordinance. In addition, buffer yards meet or exceed the ordinance requirements in all cases. Buffer yards greater than required by ordinance are provided on the south, west, and north sides to allow for berms and landscaping for screening purposes.
Number 6, the proposed use does not generate environmental impacts which may threaten public health and safety, including but not limited to air quality, odor, smoke, pollution, flooding, or loss of wetlands because
The service center does not generate environmental impacts which may threaten public health and safety. The service center will not impact the air quality negatively. Vehicles on site will rarely ever be running or idling. The building will not generate any odor or smoke issues. The service center will not generate negative impacts on flooding as there are no floodplains on site, and stormwater runoff will be handled in accordance with the city's technical manual. There are no wetlands on the service center site.
Number 7, the proposed use is compatible with surrounding uses and will not adversely affect adjacent properties because
Site and building improvements are being designed in accordance with the city of Greenwood regulations for this land use classification as related to parking, landscape, and other regulations, with the exception of the architectural items for which variances are being applied for. As can be seen in the site plan, building elevations and building rendering, the site improvements and facility will be properly buffered, and the surrounding uses do not have adverse effects imposed on them. The site is primarily a retail fronting use, and service will be on the rear, immediately adjacent to the facility and parking lots, landscape, security, fencing, berms, and site lighting like other adjacent uses. Additionally, a waste and recycling dumpster enclosure and transformer and generator enclosure will be provided and constructed of metal to architecturally match the new facility.
And number 8, the design of the structures is in harmony with the surrounding area in both style and scale because
The Interstate Commerce District contains a mixture of commercial, office, recreation, and entertainment use. This variety lends to significant variation in architectural styles and construction. While masonry is predominantly used, precast and metal are also featured heavily. As required, the proposed building uses materials approved in the design standards in a consistent manner. It would not be the only structure to feature masonry dimensional variances are being submitted for non-conforming elements. Use of neutral color two-tone material as proposed is typical, especially on buildings of similar scale. Nearby properties are largely owned by established brands such as hotel, restaurant, and grocery chains, and most buildings in the district feature brand consistent design elements to encourage customer recognition.
I don't know if you want to add the next section or if you're.
Oh, I'm sorry. Most establishments feature color accented walls and atypical materials such as metal at building entries and openings, as well as significant signage to allow visibility from I-65. Cummins brand will be similarly represented, but in a comparatively refined way, with color only featured on building signage and dark tone metal wall panels on customer focused building areas. Similarly, the district contains a variety of building scales, including standalone restaurants, strip malls, low-rise hotels, and large box retailers. The service center is comfortably within the mid-range of building size and makes it significantly smaller and less imposing than the estimated 200,000 square foot Walmart supercenter opposite I-65 proposed location.
And number 9, the proposal is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan because
The Cummins Greenwood Service Center meets the conditions of the special exception use for the Interstate Commerce District and will be in full compliance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance and recommendations of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I appreciate your thorough answers. You probably didn't expect to have to read through all of them. I really appreciate it. So, anyone else for wanting to add? If not, I'll, Mr. Nelson, I know you wanted to speak.
Yes, and then I do have a letter when you asked for opposition. The two main things staff was concerned about was the buffering and the traffic, and our conditions address both of those issues. Staff is supportive with the conditions that we propose.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? If not, we'll accept the letter that you have into the record on that. Thank you. Sean, should I read this into
Yes,
the
I
record?
would.
Okay. I will go ahead and read it into the record as you finish passing out to Mr. Nelson. This is to the Greenwood Board of Zoning Appeals regarding the Cummins Greenwood Service Center from Hal Lambert, who's the Vice President of Regency Windsor Capital. Dear Commissioners or Board, I received a special exception and dimensional variance package from Strand Associates regarding the project referenced above. Our affiliated company, the Hamptons LLC, is the owner of approximately 67 acres of commercial business and multifamily property located on the east side of Graham Road. We've been patiently waiting for the prime real estate property located at the southwest corner of Graham Road and County Line Road to be developed for a long time, and have seen many promising developments come and go over the years. This latest development being proposed, a giant truck repair center, is by far the least exciting and least desirable one we have seen. This use is totally inconsistent with the zoning intent and historic vision of the property. To make matters worse, Cummins is asking for 7 zoning variances that reduce or eliminate zoning requirements, including the reduction in minimum transparency, lower quality and character of materials, adding loading docks facing right-of-ways, mechanical equipment screening, and more. It is our strong belief that this development will be the poison pill that will stifle and diminish the quality, character, and value of the future development in the immediate and surrounding areas, including the adjacent ground the city owns. This giant truck repair center proposal is a far cry from what was originally intended. Please vote to reject this proposal in its entirety. Signed sincerely, Hal Lambert. With that, you have 5 minutes if you would like to respond to any of the content of that.
I might defer to one of my team members if that's okay.
Certainly.
Larry or Becky, if you'd like to join in on that.
And if one of you is choosing to speak, I do need to make sure you get sworn in because I don't believe we did that initially.
Very good, thank you. This is Larry Schofield. I'm a facilities manager for Cummins North America. I'll be happy to speak to the letter.
Okay, so can you, Larry, we'll have you be sworn in by our secretary, Stevie.
Please.
Do you swear no penalties for perjury? Testimony about giving true to the best of your knowledge.
I so swear.
All right, Larry, go ahead if you have some commentary in response to the letter.
Yeah, I would do. So I would point out to the commission that my assumption is that the gentleman writing the letter is unfamiliar with the design, and I think his assumptions are incorrect. There is no degradation of the quality of the materials that are going to be considered for use on this building. And I also believe that the landscaping screening that we've provided in accordance with the request through the city of Greenwood will more than address and allay the concerns that he's raised associated with the visibility of the service center itself. I think that the description of the giant service center is not entirely accurate. It's a middling sized facility. And I also believe that it is within harmony of the surrounding facilities and businesses.
Thank you. I think the only other thing I have before we close the public hearing is there are, as you mentioned, there are 1, 2, 6 conditions that the staff has proposed. I would like to just read through and make sure you are aware of all of them. I know you said you are, but just to confirm. So number 1, planning and site development plans for the project shall be in substantial compliance with the preliminary site plans submitted with this petition and labels exhibits B1 and B2. Number 2, the vehicles undergoing repair may not stay on site longer than 80 days from the date of service intake.
Yes.
Number 3, the enclosure of the waste and recycle containers shall be roofed with open air space to help buffer from view.
Yes.
Number 4, the earth mound along the north and west perimeters of the lot shall be at least 8 feet high with 6 shade trees, 14 evergreen trees, and 68 large shrubs per 210 linear feet of property line.
Yes.
Number 5, an updated traffic study for the new use shall be completed, and the results of that traffic study are to be implemented.
Yes.
And then number 6, follow potential Greenwood Engineering Division request from McCulgan Drive improvements.
Yes.
With that, I will close the public hearing. Open up to the board for questions. Ms. Peters,
I have none.
Mr. Pollard.
I only have one. You mentioned the overhead canopy on the dumpsters. Are we, I guess my question is how high is that canopy above the dumpsters? Because we thinking in our ordinances, don't we say we don't cover dumpsters?
And I don't have the exact height of that. I know I did confirm with the fire marshal that he would be okay with the open space area that they had provided in the image that is up on the screen.
Gotcha.
We reached out to him to see if there's any fire concerns with it
That looks like it's.
gathering
Yeah.
heat, but he said it would be ventilated enough where that would be acceptable.
Mr. King?
None.
Mr. Moll?
Nope.
I don't really have any either. Seems very, very well put together. Thank you. With that, are all the notices and receipts, affidavits, everything in order?
Correct, they're in order in our file.
A certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and the comprehensive plan have also been submitted to the record.
I'll take a motion to adopt into the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and comprehensive plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Mr. Peters.
Second.
Second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Take a motion on the docket itself, BTA 2022-009.
Chairman, I motion that we approve the request with the conditions indicated in the staff report.
That's all 6 of them.
That's all 6 of them.
A motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-1. I'll take a motion to direct the Corporation Council draft for findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, consideration is good. I have. Having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct Corporations Council office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decisions on the variance request presented in variance petition number BCA 2022-009. Setback findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by this board of zoning appeals as our final decision, final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mr. Moll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to BCA 2022-011, which is also for the same property. I'm sorry, 010. Thank you. It's a development standards variance. Same petitioner, again, on behalf of Cummins, requesting relief from the Greenwood Municipal Code, Section 10, Unified Development Ordinance number 2329, Section 10.3-14, Section 10.3-9F, and Section 10.3-9G. Commercial building architectural standards for the following 7 developmental variances. Number 1, minimum of 30% transparency for the building wall on the south elevation. Minimum of 30% transparency for the building wall on the west and northwest elevation. Number 3, a minimum of 50% mortared masonry for front elevation on the south, which is the south elevation. Number 4, precast concrete panels shall not exceed 50% of front elevation, which is again the south elevation. Number 5, overhead doors prohibited on walls facing the street right of way, which is multiple elevations. Number 6, trash receptacle enclosure shall be wood or masonry and be 12 inches above receptacle height. And number 7, the mechanical equipment shall be screened with 100% opaque materials. All right. So, Mr. Chinsky, right?
Yeah,
And you are you speaking to this one as well?
I'm gonna actually have Allison here.
Okay. So I probably need to have him sworn in again for this.
If
Okay,
you're going to
so
speak, yes.
anyone wishing
Whoever
to
is going
speak on behalf of this, please stand, raise your right hand and be sworn in by the secretary.
restaurant, street restaurant.
And name and address for the record.
My name is Allison Luzuck. I work for HOK out of St. Louis. Address is 200 South Broadway in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, so this, we have 7 very distinct requests here.
Yes.
So I will have you give us an overview of all of it, because they do tie in together. When we go through the statutory criteria, to try to avoid repeating the same thing over and over. I know some of the answers are slightly different, but I will have you try to answer them collectively one time, if that works for you.
That does, because it's a lot.
As long as it's clear which criteria goes with which
Which
variance,
was
because we'll have to itemize those in the
Okay.
mind games, so.
Okay, we'll get through it together on that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, so as mentioned, I realize 7 variances is a lot, but our intention was to make sure that we just covered all of our bases so that we didn't have to come back to you if we uncovered something else. So some of them potentially could have been grouped together, but we were just trying to do our due diligence. So I would like to thank you, Mark, for kind of explaining our program, and based on communication with zoning, our understanding was that we would have 2 front elevations. Our southern elevation that has the retail warehouse, and that orange piece you see to the left is an immediate assessment bay. I kind of think about that as if you're getting your car repaired, the bay that you drive into immediately. And then also our western elevation, because there's going to be a new road, is our understanding. So that would face the service space. So those are the front elevations that we were considering. We also did consider the north elevation from County Line Road because it is a visible site and we wanted to be respectful of that. So the first 2 variances have to do with transparency requirements on our front elevations. This is our southern elevation. We hit about 20% transparency, and that is largely due to the warehouse component that we have. We did study putting glazing on that, but my understanding of the regulations was that you were trying to create a cohesive, nice looking building, and that warehouse will have interior shelves. So if we had exterior glazing, you would be looking at the back of boxes, and we didn't think that that would be ideal. To offset that from an interior perspective, that whole block has skylights, so any workers in there will still receive ample natural light. And we felt that this was a better aesthetic solution than windows that would ultimately not be used. To offset that, we did pay special attention to this retail facade, a storefront glass system with a metal design element, a specialized like metal entry vestibule, and then that immediate assessment bay to the left, we're featuring high quality overhead doors and polycarbonate specialized panels above that will kind of like glow at night and look nice from the exterior. So that is the south facade. Unfortunately, there we go. The west facade, we also achieved about 20% glazing. I think this is largely due to the overhead doors that we selected for functional purposes. Again, the intention is that these are good quality metal that matches the aesthetic of the building. However, we did want to keep them solid towards the bottom just to avoid damage from trucks potentially hitting them. And that was just more consistent with the use of the building. Again, to offset this, those lighter portions above each overhead door is another semi-transparent translucent piece, and there will be skylights throughout that whole service bay. And again, being cognizant of concerns about the visibility, we felt that the more solid doors would block potentially people moving around on forklifts or things going on inside the facility. And these doors will also be screened from view by the landscape to an extent. So that covers the first 2 variances. I don't know why I was spelling ahead because the other ones have to do with these elevations as well. The second 2 variances I'm going to group together as well. I believe number 3 was the preference to use mortar masonry as the primary building element, and number 4 was the preference to not have precast exceed 50% of the front elevation. And so of course, as we did not select to use mortar masonry, or precast exceeded 50%, so those go hand in hand. We did study mortar masonry as a building element, however, we found precast to be a better option structurally, sustainably, and economically. It also allowed us more flexibility in design. I am the project designer. From my perspective, if we did masonry, there was going to be 2 different routes. One would be the traditional like 4x6 bricks. And I don't know if you've ever stood right up next to an all brick building, but it can be kind of overwhelming. And I thought that it would make our facade feel larger than it actually was. And the alternative to that would have been cement blocks, which carry a very industrial feel, which is what I felt was not what we were going for a commercial district. And so considering that, we have precast is cladding the 2 primary elements, the clear on the first slide, the purple warehouse portion and the gray service bay. And precast kind of allowed me a little bit more flexibility. You can see the lines on the facade are reveals, and also between that there are some setbacks in the plane, so it's not just one flat plane of precast, as well as that strip at the bottom is going to be a textured striated precast of a slightly different color. It is also the intent that this is a high quality precast with a good finish. This is not the like gray concrete looking precast. It is a finished product. So that covers the next 2, so I'm at 4. I think Mark addressed overhead doors to an extent. That is our building program. To offset that, our intention is to use good quality overhead doors. They won't just be solid metal. The overhead doors at the immediate assessment bay will be all glazing, even to the extent that I'm working with the supplier to avoid vertical mullions to give them a cleaner look. And we've introduced glazing to the extent that we could on the service bay elevations. Again, because of the orientation of our building, almost every facade is a front facade, so it was essentially unavoidable to have it facing a street. Again, though, we have the landscape buffering and are willing to go above and beyond to help buffer that from view. I actually have some views to kind of show our intent. We don't want this to be imposing or distracting. I really hope it's just a simple design that works well in the area. Dumpster screening was brought up. The code states to use wood or masonry. As we did not propose using those building elements elsewhere, we thought it would not be consistent to use them for the dumpster enclosure. So we're proposing a metal screen that is consistent with the materials we're using elsewhere. And we did add a roof. We thought that that would be more agreeable and essentially completely screen the dumpsters. Right now, it is about 15 feet high, so that the trash trucks can get the bins out without having to pull them out, so that the bins can hopefully stay in there and really just reduce visibility as much as possible. We are still working through the details on that to make sure it's acceptable from an operational and fire perspective. And then the last one had to do with rooftop screening. Please correct me if I interpreted the code wrong, but your goal is that no mechanical units or rooftop screening is visible at all from the rights of way. We are still working through mechanical, and we don't know the heights of those units. We do intend to fully screen them. And so I included this to just make sure it was in there. I felt that because of our building height and location, because the interstate is elevated and it's, you know, flat plane, that it wasn't going to be possible to keep them completely like obstructed from view. But we do have all the screening set back a minimum of 25 feet. from the front facade. So it is not part of the main facade when you view it, and it's, my goal is that it is as least obstructive as possible.
Okay.
And I think I just got it all.
Very good. Anyone else, Mr. Nelson?
It does seem like a lot of variances. I think they all sort of blend together. The trash is to match the building. The lack of masonry is being replaced by the panels like we have on the field house here. So those two kind of go together as well. And then the nature of the business is really what brings in those overhead doors, which that's really, without the overhead doors, you don't have the special exception use. With that, I believe the rooftop screening, they're looking at a perforated metal, is what I've heard, which wouldn't totally be 100%, could be something like 98%. It was my understanding that it was the metal with the small holes in it, but I could have misinterpreted that, misread that. And with that, staff is supportive of the variances.
You had some conditions as well? Four
Conditions.
Yeah, there were 4 conditions. There was the approval of any or all of the requested development variances shall be conditioned upon approval of the special use exception to permit vehicular care services major in the IC interstate commercial zoning district, which was just approved. Number 2, the conditions placed upon the special use exception shall be adhered to in the site development plans and building plans. Number 3, the platting and site development plans for the project shall be in substantial compliance with the preliminary site plans submitted with this petition and labeled as exhibits B1 and B2. And then number 4, the building's architectural design and materials shall be in substantial compliance with the renderings submitted with this petition and labeled as exhibit C, D1, D2, D3, and D4. We do need to go through the criteria for each of these. Perhaps it might make sense to do it as you kind of discussed it, which is numbers 1 and 2 are probably going to have similar responses, I would assume, and then 3 and 4 will, and then we'll do 5, 6, and 7 as we go. So the first is the approval will not be injurious to the public. So this would be in relation to a minimum of 30% transparency for the building walls. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because.
And for both of those, we will still provide an equivalent amount of natural light via skylight for emotional well-being, and it did not pose any other physical I lost the word.
No worries.
Issues.
Okay. Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, included in the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
At this time, all adjacent properties are vacant.
And then number 3, the strict application of the terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because.
Glazing on the exterior walls of the warehouse will be more susceptible to damage and maintenance. The shelving and items stored against the interior walls would obstruct natural light infiltration, requiring higher electricity use. And I'll read the one for the other elevation as well. Achieving 30% transparency will require increasing the glazing on the overhead doors, impacting the robustness of the doors and creating a potentially unsafe condition.
Numbers 3 and 4. So. Sorry.
Trying to follow, but it's confusing because you're jumping
Oh,
back and
sorry.
forth between these two, so. Go on.
All right, let's just do number 3. I'll do the regulated. I'll do that all at once because that's the same for. Yeah. So let's just do number 3. Minimum 50% mortar masonry for front elevation. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because.
This request pertains only to the exterior materiality and will not impact the general welfare of the community.
The use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
At this time, all adjacent properties are vacant.
In the strict application of the terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
Per Commons Grant standards, exterior wall construction is to be insulated precast concrete panel. In comparison to mortar masonry, precast allows a thinner wall construction and therefore a more efficient use of interior space and more economic and sustainable use of labor and materials. Additionally, as precast carries a lower cost per square foot, we are able to use higher quantities of other quality and visually unique materials elsewhere, such as polycarbonate. While strict adherence to the ordinance does not pose a practical difficulty, we feel our solution allows an elevated design that is respectful to the spirit of both the Cummins brand and green standards.
Number 4, precast concrete panels shall not exceed 50% of front elevation. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
Again, this request pertains only to exterior materiality and will not impact the general welfare of the community.
the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
At this time, all adjacent properties are vacant.
and the strict application of terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of property because
Per Cummins brand standard, exterior wall construction is to be insulated precast concrete panel. To reduce the area by 10% would require rework of the material composition of the elevation and a reduction in surface of high quality materials to compensate. Additionally, exterior material transitions created on the warehouse in order to add masonry will draw more attention to the use of precast rather than away from it. While strict adherence to the ordinance does not pose a practical difficulty, we feel our solution allows an elevated design that is respectful to the spirit of both Cummins brand and green standards.
Okay, number 6, trash receptacle enclosure shall be wood or masonry and be 12 inches above the receptacle height. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
The rooftop screening will not impact public safety.
and use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I should have said that one.
I believe you did actually.
Yeah, I did.
Yep, so for the
Okay,
overhead
so one
doors,
side and seven.
sorry, for the overhead doors, approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
For the overhead doors are in alignment with building use and will not negatively impact public welfare.
the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
The adjacent properties are vacant.
and then the strict application of terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because so page 13.
No.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow
Very-
the pages.
And I, it was my
That's
mistake
why
on.
I'm jumping back and forth on the back of the bar.
I got you confused for starting with, so. Your written response started with access to each service bay, the assessment bay via overhead doors, so I don't know if that helps you find it.
First sheet that says variance request number 5.
Oh, okay, sorry. I don't know what my printer did. Access to each service bay and the assessment bay via overhead doors is required for building operations. Cummins standards require that the assessment bay be placed adjacent to the retail area and easily accessible from the right of way to facilitate wayfinding and customer experience. As our site has 2 adjacent right of way facing elevations and access doors are required on each side of the service bay, there is no optimal building orientation that avoids placing overhead doors on a right of way facade.
Number 6, I actually got ahead of myself. So 6 is the trash receptacle enclosure shall be wood or masonry be 12 inches above receptacle height. Again, the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
The enclosures are located at the back of the site and will not impact the public.
the use and value of the area adjacent to property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
At this time, all adjacent properties are vacant.
in the strict application of terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in use of the property because
Masonry and wood are not utilized elsewhere in the design, and procuring the quantities required for a small enclosure would not be financially or energy efficient. Wood specifically would provide a less durable solution than a pre-engineered metal system or CMU wall with metal face. While strict adherence to the ordinance does not pose significant practical difficulties, we feel the solution we have proposed is in alignment with the intention of the ordinance and the preferences of the community.
And then number 7, mechanical equipment shall be screened with 100% opaque materials. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
The rooftop screening will not impact public safety.
use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because,
At this time, all adjacent properties are vacant.
and the strict application of terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because,
We feel it is not possible to completely obscure rooftop screening from view due to the nature of the site and building programs. Any equipment itself will not be visible.
and then for all of those, the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3. Yeah. That's all I need to say there. Okay, anyone, I don't believe I asked for anyone wishing to speak against.
The letter did address both the special exception and the dimensional variances.
So I was going to comment on that the letter was in regards to both. I'm not going to read it again unless Sean tells me I have to.
You're gonna attach it. It will be attached.
reference.
Yeah.
This was already referenced on docket 009. Okay, anything else to add?
That's it.
With that, I will close the public hearing. Ms. Peters,
No questions.
Mr. Fuller,
No questions.
Mr. King,
No questions.
Mr. Mall.
Nope.
The only thing I have to say is, for us, criteria needs to be met. And you made a couple statements on items 3 and 4 that concern me, which is that they didn't necessarily create practical difficulties to do the less brick and more precast concrete panels for the 50%, that it was a more viable solution. So I guess I would like to ask if you have any statement as far as the strict application causing issues, or if it truly would not be a structural problem.
It would not be a structural problem. We would be willing to consider it if that is the consideration.
And I guess I would ask the board if you have any comments along that line that you feel there's any strict application causing practical difficulties.
This was 3 and 4. This is
Yeah, this is on
Got some.
the brick versus masonry question. If not, then we will move forward. Okay. Are all the notices, receipts, affidavits, everything in order?
They are, and they're in the file.
A certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and the comprehensive plan have also been submitted into the record, into the file.
I would take a motion to adopt all those into the record for all 7 requests.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and comprehensive plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'll take a motion on request number 1, which is the request for minimum of 30% transparency for building wall south elevation.
Chairman, I motion that we approve that request with the conditions indicated by the staff report.
And that is all 4 of them.
All 4 of them.
A motion to approve with the 4 conditions.
Second.
Second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-1. And a motion on number 2, which is a minimum of 30% transparency for building wall west and northwest elevation.
I move that we approve with the 4 listed conditions.
Motion approved with 4 conditions by Mr. King, second by Mr. Mole. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-1. Number 3, the minimum 50% mortared masonry for the front elevation, which is south elevation.
No question. This is one of those that there was no practical difficulty. Chairman, I recommend that we deny this request.
Motion by Mr. Peters to deny that request.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Polar. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that is in favor of the denial. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Number 4, precast concrete panel shall not exceed 50% of the front elevation, which is south elevation.
Mr. Chairman, I also move that the request be denied.
Motion by Mr. Polar to deny, second by Mr. Mole. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Number 5, the overhead doors prohibited on walls facing the street right away, multiple elevations.
I move we approve with the
4 conditions.
yes, thank you.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Peters to approve with the 4 conditions. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Is that an approval or an opposal?
It's opposed.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. Sorry, you were in the middle of.
I see him coming down.
I knew it was coming, right?
Number 6, trash receptacle enclosure shall be wood or masonry and be 12 inches above the receptacle height.
Chairman, I motion that we deny this request.
Motion to deny.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
You lost me there.
Sorry, it was a motion to deny.
Request
Mr. Peters and second by Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
And the vote for the denial was
3-2.
3-2, and the ayes for that motion were.
Peters, myself, and Fuller.
Thank you.
And then number 7, the mechanical equipment shall be screened with 100% opaque materials.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve this request.
With the 4
With the
conditions.
4 conditions, thank you.
Moved by Ms. Peters. Second by Mr. Mole. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion, and that one carries 4-1. Okay, so we have some of them approved, some of them not. I continue to work with planning staff and move forward. I'll take a motion to direct the Corporation Council to draft written findings of fact.
Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the Corporation Counsel's office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented and variance petition number BZA 2022-010, said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as a final decision, final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, we move on to BZA 2022-11, Developmental Standards Variance for Greenwood Parks and Recreation, requesting relief from Unified Development Ordinance Section 10-3-8 for signage. Menu on premise signs allowed by permit, 2 building wall signs, dimensions maximum face area 200 square feet. They're requesting 216.75 square foot wall sign for the new Greenwood Fieldhouse. All those wishing to speak. to this docket, please stand and be sworn in.
Who is presenting?
The presenter is not here.
And well, so in consideration of time and not having a presenter, I would ask that we make a motion to move this to
Yes,
continue it.
and to go with that, I do believe they're adding another sign to that wall, so we can amend the request to go forward with that at a different meeting.
What is the date that you are continuing it to?
Well, what's our schedule look like for our next session?
The next session already has a pretty full agenda.
The next meeting, it would be June
Well, next
13th. After May
May 23rd.
If that's a full agenda. you
Right, I
still
don't
have-
want to add to that.
It'd be
It'd be the 6th.
June.
It'll be 13.
Oh, 13, because we don't have it.
And Sean, if they're amending it, do we just move to continue or do we?
The,
To that date.
we could see both variances that day. They filed the second one, it's a different petition, and that one will be heard on the 13th. So they would just have
So
back-to-back variances
13.
on the 13th, if we continue it to that date.
So we have
So the motion by Mr. Fuller,
Second.
second by Mr. Peters, and everyone else. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries to move it to June 13th meeting.
Yes.
We do not, you just keep it. Do not turn that in.
You just keep that as
Yeah, keep that.
We'll get you one.
No, we'll get you one. Any announcements?
Really quick, I'd like to introduce you guys to Rick. Rick's been with us for, this will be his third week, I guess. And we're very excited to have him. So you'll be seeing him next meeting in my absence. We'll senior planner who will be starting on that.
Okay, and Rick, what is your last name?
My name, his full name is Rick Butler.
Butler. Well, welcome.
Nice to meet you all.
It's nice meeting you. Glad to have you. Any other announcements, Sean?
No, sir.
Seeing none, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. King, so moved. This meeting is adjourned.